the relentless rain cascaded down upon the Minecraft world, Steve found himself trapped in the suffocating monotony of his dreary abode, nestled in the heart of a colourless, lifeless landscape. The mundane existence had become unbearable, pushing him to the brink of despair. It was time for change, and so, with absolute determination burning in his pixelated eyes, the Steve made a choice that would change his life forever, as he was no longer content with the life that he led. And so, his new purpose was clear, as Steve set his sights on a remarkable quest, one that would see him traversing across the entire expanse of this fantastical realm. He was going to go to every biome, no matter how treacherous or enchanting they were. He was going to visit them all. And so, over the span of several years, he voyaged across the blistering Badlands, delved deep into the abyss of the darkest caves, and revelled in the tranquil beauty of the blissful Cherry Grove. It was amazing, as the Steve had never seen such awe-inspiring landscapes before this adventure. However, as the cycle of the Minecraft seasons continued, a day arrived that would test Steve like never before. As it was on that day that a snowstorm of unprecedented fury descended upon him, its icy claws threatening to obliterate all in its path. Panic coursed through Steve's veins as he realized that he had no time to construct a shelter of any kind. And so, in a moment of sheer desperation, Steve made a rash decision. He was going to attempt to outrun this tempest, to defy the very elements that sought to claim his life. Now, this was a reckless gamble, but it was the only thing that he could think to do. However, with every step that he took, the storm grew fiercer and fiercer as its freezing aura was closing in around him. And so, Steve's breath formed frosty clouds in the unforgiving chill of the world. But still, Steve carried on, as his legs carried him forward, with each stride being a battle against the relentless onslaught of the winter's fury. Yet, as the relentless snow began to blanket the world, the cruel reality dawned upon him. He was losing this battle against nature, as its icy grips of death tightened around him, gnawing at his soul. However, just when all hope seemed lost, when the frigid fingers of fate threatened to claim him, Steve stumbled upon a sight that defied comprehension. It was a mysterious entrance that seemed to be abandoned. And so, its presence in the midst of this deadly snowstorm was nothing short of a miracle. And so, bruised, battered, and on the brink of death, Steve entered the unknown. Now, at first, Steve struggled to make out the eerie surroundings, and so he stumbled in his inventory and retrieved a torch, and with trembling hands he ignited it, casting a feeble glow that barely pierced the darkness that shrouded this building. And so even with the torch's flickering light, Steve could only discern fragmented glimpses of his surroundings. Rotting, splintered wooden flooring, ancient cobwebs, and the macabre remains of skeletal skulls scattered ominously around. A shiver ran down his spine as a sense of dread crept over him. The very atmosphere of this building seemed to pulse with malevolence. But despite the creeping fear that gnawed at the edges of his soul, Steve knew that the unforgiving forces of that storm that raged beyond these decaying walls were far more deadly. And so, he had no choice but to press onwards into the unknown abyss of this building. However, very quickly, minutes turned into hours, and hours turned into eternities, as Steve ventured deeper into that decrepit structure, with his torch casting long, wavering shadows that danced like phantoms on the ancient walls. The air grew colder, more oppressive, as though the very building itself exhaled the chilling breath of thousands of centuries long gone. At last, weary and in need of sustenance, Steve decided to pause for a moment, and so he lowered his torch to the ground and took out his meager supplies, ready to recharge his energy before continuing his exploration. However, as he placed the torch upon what he thought was just a simple, weathered stone surface, a sudden reality struck him like a lightning bolt, as the moment that the torch made contact with that stone, a subtle click resonated throughout the chamber, and so the Steve watched in stunned horror as the entire section of that building sprang to life, bathed in a ghastly, dim yellow light. His heart raced as he took in the surroundings that had been shrouded in darkness until that very moment, as before him the ominous illuminated chamber revealed its true nature. An ancient, long-forgotten factory with peculiar contraptions of an age long past. The air hung with an oppressive aura, and the room began to pulse with a sinister energy. Steve's breath caught in his throat as he stood there, frozen in disbelief and terror. The realization washed over him like an icy tide, as he had stumbled into something far more sinister, enigmatic than anything that he could have ever imagined. This building was not abandoned. No, it was a place of ancient, malevolent power, and he was its unwitting intruder. And so, those sinister creatures, shrouded in the macabre, began to surge towards the Steve. Steve's heart raced as he struggled to comprehend what stood before him. Those beings who resembled Santa's jovial elves were twisted, corrupted, and unmistakably malevolent. Their eyes, once filled with the twinkle of the holiday cheer, had turned obsidian black, devoid of any joy. Tattered, blood-stained elf costumes clung to their decaying frames, their former festive charm reduced to mere eerie remnants of what they once were. And in their skeletal hands, they clutched toys that really should have brought joy, a sinister parody of their original purpose, as those playthings were now brandished like weapons, poised to inflict harm upon Steve. Realization surged through him like you realizing that you haven't subscribed yet, as he now knew that they were coming to attack him. And so, with a grim resolve, Steve drew his trusty diamond sword, its blade gleaming with the promise of fierce combat. The time had come to confront the darkness that lurked within the factory. As the first of the malevolent elves lunged at him, and with that, a deadly dance unfolded within the factory as the Steve parried their twisted toys turned into weapons. The clash of metal against the makeshift arms resonating with every strike, while the torchlight painted a macabre tableau of combat, flickering shadows and sparks of steel bleeding into a nightmarish symphony. Now, this fight raged on for several hours, with each moment being a battle for survival, as Steve struggled to maintain his ground against the relentless onslaughts of these demons, as fatigue gnawed at his limbs and the chilling aura of the factory sapped his strength. Yet, despite that, his determination burned brighter than ever before. And in the final, heart-pounding moments, Steve was able to summon every ounce of strength that he had left, and with a fierce, determined strike, he defeated the last of the 1,000-strong, malevolent elves. And so, their twisted existence was finally brought to an end. The battle had been fierce, the cost high, but against all odds, he emerged triumphant. And so, with heavy breaths, Steve cast a wary eye upon the desolate factory, knowing that this was only the beginning of the mysteries and terrors hidden within. But he was undeterred, for the unquenchable fire of curiosity burned within him, driving him forward into the unknown, where even darker secrets awaited his discovery in the abandoned Christmas factory. And so, Steve pressed deeper and deeper into this forsaken workshop. His torch flickered erratically, casting eerie, dancing shadows upon the countless abandoned machines that stood like forgotten sentinels of a bygone era. But soon, profound sadness washed over him as he took in the sight. The remnants of what was once Santa's bustling and joyous workshop now laid in ruin. It was a poignant reminder of the darkness that had overtaken this place. But as Steve ventured deeper into the labyrinth of this factory, an unsettling sensation gnawed at his senses. It was the unmistakable feeling of being watched. Unseen eyes were tracking his every move. The hair on the back of his pixelated neck bristled with unease. Fear surged through him, a chilling dread that sent his heart pounding. At that moment, he knew that he had to escape this eerie place, even if that meant confronting the tempest outside. And so, with determination, he retraced his steps, racing back to the exit. But when he reached the heavy doors, a harsh reality struck him as the door had been slammed shut, as if by some demonic force. And so, no amount of his strength could budge it. And so, panic set in as he realized that he was trapped and was left with no choice but to delve even deeper into the factory's sinister depths. But after a few hours of constantly running, the production floor eventually gave way to a narrow, winding staircase that spiraled upwards. And so he began to climb up those stairs. But as he did that, he could hear the wooden steps creaking, almost as if they were going to break. But luckily, he was able to make it to the top of those stairs without issue. But once he reached the summit, he saw that there was an office that overlooked the entire factory right there. But that office was mostly empty, with the exception of a small, dark oak desk. And on that desk, there was a singular item, an old, weathered book. And so Steve began to approach that book very cautiously, as his curiosity was piqued. And so, once he reached it, he got out his gloves and gently opened the ancient book. And as he began to read the pages within, the secrets of the abandoned factory began to unwind. December 24th, unknown year. Things have gone remarkably well for hundreds of years. The workshop has become a place of boundless joy, where laughter and the spirit of giving have flourished. The reindeer, loyal and true, have guided my sleigh through countless Christmas Eves, and the world has known the warmth of my presence for a long time. However, as the years have gone by, the demands placed upon me have grown overwhelming, as the world has expanded, and with it, the expectations of the children. And so, the workshop, once a place of enchantment, has become a frenzied hive of activity, a relentless assembly line of toys to meet the ever-increasing demand of the world. And so, in my desperation to keep the magic alive, I foolishly turned to the dark and forbidden arts of magic. And at first, it worked marvelously, as the dark magic allowed me to create more presents than ever before, and so I was able to fulfill the wishes of countless villagers around the world. But the insidious nature of the power that I harnessed became clear, as I found myself drawn deeper into its shadowy depths. I became addicted to that malevolent force, craving it, and so it clouded my judgment, whispering promises of endless productivity and power, and the workshop hummed with unnatural efficiency. But soon, the light in my heart grew dimmer with each passing day. I realized too late the terrible cost of my actions. The factory, once a place of joy, began to warp and change. Malevolence swept into every corner, and I too felt the creepy corruption tainting my very soul. And so, I watched in horror as my once beloved elves and reindeer transformed into sinister shadows of their former selves. And so, in a desperate attempt to save what little remained of my humanity, I made a decision. I would hide myself away, seeking refuge in the secret cave beneath my office. I hoped that by isolating myself, I could prevent the malevolence from spreading further, so that I could shield the factory from the darkness that had consumed me. Already, I could feel the evil tightening its grip onto my heart, and dark visions of the factory's future haunted my every waking moment. As I write these words, I know that there is no other choice. I will go into that cave, and I will seal myself away for all of eternity, praying that it might somehow save the world from the darkness that I have unwittingly unleashed. May this act of self-sacrifice be my final gift to a world I once filled with joy and wonder. Yours sinisterly, Santa Claus. Steve carefully closed the ancient diary as a shiver of both fascination and dread coursed through his blocky frame as the revelations contained within those pages had peeled back the layers of Santa's story, exposing a harrowing descent into darkness, and the weight of that history hung heavily on his shoulders. But there was something else, an unquenchable curiosity. And so, with newfound determination, Steve decided to investigate further. And so, climbing through the now broken floors of that eerie office, he was able to descend into an outdoor area that felt strangely abandoned. More so than the rest of the factory, it felt as if the world had forgotten its existence. But that didn't matter, as before him, a gaping cave entrance beckoned him. But on the contrary to the diary's account, the cave's entrance was cracked open, as if nature itself had conspired to reveal the inner evil of Santa. And so he foolishly decided to venture within. But with each step into those cavernous depths, the air grew colder, and Steve's senses tingled with the unmistakable feeling of being watched. And so he cast his gaze around that decrepit cave, while using his torch to cast light onto those eerie cave walls. But it was at that moment that an oppressive atmosphere pressed upon him, as he now understood that he was not alone. A presence tainted with evil and malevolence lurked in the shadows, waiting to reveal itself. And suddenly, it did, as a sinister figure emerged from the darkness. A corrupted Santa, his once jolly countenance twisted into a grotesque mockery of the holiday cheer. And the battle that soon ensued was nothing short of an epic, fierce clash of pixelated might against the embodiment of darkness itself. Now, this fight was long and difficult, with each blow echoing through the cavern as the corrupted Santa unleashed his malevolent powers, and evil was prevailing as Steve's health quickly dwindled perilously low, and it seemed as though he was on the brink of defeat. But then, as if by some stroke of luck or fate, Steve stumbled upon a nut chapel, and so seeing this relic of power and resilience, he devoured it, feeling its incredible energy surge through him. And with this newfound strength, he began to push back against the malevolence that threatened to consume him. And so, the battle raged on, with an epic struggle between light and darkness, as the Steve fought with unwavering determination, his sword clashing against the corrupted Santa's twisted form. The very cave itself began to tremble under the weight of their conflict as the battle was coming to a closing. But in the end, it was the Steve who emerged victorious, as his courage and the power of the Nut Chapel allowed him to overcome the demonic force that had taken hold of Santa Claus. And so, after that, Steve just stood there, as he knew that he had ventured into the heart of darkness and emerged with a newfound understanding of the world. And so, he just needed to process that, as the secrets that he had uncovered and the battles that he had fought had transformed him into a hero, a beacon of hope almost, in a world tainted by corruption and greed. But after Steve emerged from that grueling battle with the corrupted Santa, his weary eyes caught a glimmer of hope. It was a soft, glowing pink light. And so, intrigued, he began to make his way over to it. And, to his astonishment, right by that light was Santa, restored to his former self as he now radiated in a gentle, otherworldly aura. And so, it was then that the once tormented Santa thanked Steve with a warm and heartfelt gratitude that echoed throughout the cavern. The curse that consumed him for centuries had finally been broken, and his spirit was free. But the respite was short-lived, as, in a blinding flash of light, they were transported back to the workshop. And so, Steve's eyes scanned the surroundings in a frantic search for Santa. But the jolly figure had vanished once more. And so, without hesitation, Steve began to sprint through the factory, where he quickly noticed that it too had been transformed, as the once corrupted elves were now exuding joy and merriness, and were diligently crafting toys with renewed enthusiasm. And so, the entire workshop had returned to its former glory, covered in the spirit of Christmas. And after a few hours of running, the Steve spotted Santa, as he was right by the entrance, because he was preparing to ascend into the skies once more, with the reindeer eagerly waiting for their moment of flight. And so, the restored Santa then explained to the Steve that he longed to journey over the world once more, to see it with fresh eyes after being sealed away in the darkness for so long. But it was at that moment that Steve made a decision, as he decided that he wanted to join Santa. And well, with a determined nod by the jolly angel, he jumped into the sleigh and was ready for this new, extraordinary adventure with Santa Claus. And as the sleigh took flight, they soared into the night sky, leaving a trail that resembled a shooting star to those below. And as they travelled the world, their presence ignited a sense of wonder in all that gazed up at the night sky. Now, Santa, profoundly moved by this experience and by the chance to make amends, decided to grant a special gift to anyone who saw the celestial journey. It was a wish, a token of goodwill to repay for the lack of integrity that he had shown the world in the last few hundred years. And so, to find out what wish was granted, you'll need to watch this video.